Well guys, welcome back to my short GPU review series, this time with the RTX 5090 Zotac Solid OC. Now in this series, I try to give you guys in around 5 minutes what I think about a certain custom model of a GPU, because I think videos about this topic really shouldn't be any longer. So with that said, this card is a Founders Edition replacement model, which means it's among the cheapest ones, and it's not promising to give you any special aesthetics or performance or feats out of the ordinary. So for the price, what we need to know is, does it work how it should, and should you guys buy it? And the answer, again, I give it to you guys quickly, is yes to both, which means the card does exactly what it promises. It is a 5090, so it has pretty high production standards, and the core is that of a 5090. It has 32 gigabytes of VRAM, GDDR7, and it works very well. With that said though, the argument shows up for, should you buy such a cheap model, or should you pay the $200 or $300 more, which, put in perspective of the price of the card itself, are not that much in percentage? I'll give you guys my opinion right after we cover the unboxing and install process. So box is pretty straightforward, very minimal, and it's not trying to give you guys the impression of luxury. I've unboxed RTX 5070 GPUs, which felt a lot more premium than this card. It's very simple, just a box. You do get a little cool card from Zotac, but that you get in the lower end models as well. And inside you simply find the power adapter, an ARGB 3-pin adapter, which you're gonna need to plug the card to your motherboard unless you wanna use the terrible software from Zotac, which we'll cover in a second, and a GPU stand. Card itself is not wrapped in anything special, and mine also had a few of the port cover which came out during shipping. You can do some peel-offs, but not especially satisfying, and mine were also a little bit melted. Now let's cover the first issue, and the first issue is Zotac software. Now I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't be using any kind of software with your GPUs, so it doesn't really matter if the software is not the best. Firestorm basically promises you to be able to overclock your card and control the RGB, and while it does both of those things, it does them pretty bad. If you want to do some overclocking, you should use MSI Afterburner or Asus GPU Tweak, even if you don't have either an MSI or Asus card, because they are compatible with every single card in the market, so that's not really important. The RGB though, it's pretty ugly, but this is a card which doesn't promise to be pretty. Even though I really like the golden accents, and I think, for example, it goes very well with the fractal design Nordic cell I've put it in, this is overall a very unimpressive card, and I think the lighting on the writing would actually be better if monochromatic and just not changing. But if you want to control that properly, you're going to have to connect the additional cable, which is exactly on the front of your GPU, and is going to be right in the middle of your build, so you can see it every day. And that I clearly do not like. Even though you're running it right next to the 12-volt type power connector, so it's not going to be a big deal, I still think it looks very ugly. With the aesthetics aside, this is a massive card, 3-slot card, chunky heatsink, very heavy GPU, just like you would be expecting from 5090. It's definitely heavier and larger than a Founders Edition card, but it actually manages to perform the same and actually a little bit better on the VRAM side. On the VRAM, it is a few degrees cooler than the Founders Edition. However, it doesn't really get to 10 degrees difference. Also, the temperature is going to vary depending on which BIOS you choose, because this card has a dual BIOS, which you can switch by a button, which is absolutely non-convenient because you don't know which BIOS you're selecting. Normal cards have a switch when you put it from 1 to 2, and in this way you know which BIOS you're running. Now, while I love having a dual BIOS because it allows me to do some power limit unlocking via BIOS flashing and to mess around with my card, I would like to know which BIOS I'm currently on. Now, the two BIOSes really, they don't differ much at all. The only constant is the coil whine. This GPU has a lot of coil whine. You're gonna hear it, especially at idle, but also under light loads where the card is being used, but you can't have your fans covering it. The card itself is not too loud under load, even though at 100% of load, to keep the temperatures at around 70 degrees, it does run a bit too loud. I'll show you guys the fire track for both the performance BIOS and the quiet one. And as you can see, there is a minimal difference, even though I have to say the quiet one is substantially quieter thanks to the fan curve being tuned. However, you should just put the performance BIOS and then undervolt your GPU, as I show in my tutorials, because undervolting and manual tuning in general always wins. You should never buy a card based on the out-of-the-box tweaking. The power limit wiggle room, however, is pretty small, just 104%. So that's also not the best for overclocking and undervolting. All in all, the card is pretty underwhelming in every aspect, but has no issue whatsoever, which means if you don't really care about your GPU and you just need a GPU for its power, you don't care about the aesthetics, you don't care about the noise too much, this is a great buy because it's cheap and in quite a few aspects it's better than a founder's card if you have the space to accommodate for it. However, personally, I would buy a higher end model and spend just a little bit more. But as usual, you're free to disagree with me down below in the comments. However, before you do that, maybe drop a like and subscribe if you watched the video so far. And I hope to see you guys in another video as well. Bye bye.